5 after making Christianity the official religion of the empire. 14. The Western Roman Empire began to disintegrate in the early 5th century as the Germanic migrations and invasions of the migration period overwhelmed the capacity of the empire to assimilate the immigrants and fight off the invaders. Most chronologies place the end of the Western Roman Empire in 476, when Romulus Augustulus was forced to abdicate to the Germanic warlord Odoacer. 15. By placing himself under the rule of the Eastern Emperor Zeno rather than naming himself or a puppet ruler as emperor, as the Germanic chiefs had done, Odoacer ended the Constantinople inaugurated 11 May 330 East-West Division 17 January 395 Fall of the West 4 September 476 Sack of Constantinople 8 the 13th of April 1204 Reconquest of Constantinople 25 July 1261 Fall of Constantinople 29 May 1453 Area 25 BC 2,750,000 kilometer 1,060,000 square mi, AD 117, 2, 3, 5,000,000 kilometer 1,900,000 square mi, AD 390, 2, 4,400,000 kilometer 1,700,000 square mi. Population 25 BC, 4, 56,800,000 Current Statius Aureus, Solidus Nomis Mag succeeded by Consulate Lictores. PNG. Roman Republic Byzantine Empire Constantine multiple CDMB Istegi 233.jpg. Are officially the final emperor of the Western Empire. Be last emperor of the Eastern Byzantine Empire. See abbreviated HS. Prices and values are usually expressed in sesterces. See below for currency denominations by period. Separate Roman government of the Western Empire. The Eastern Empire exercised diminishing control over the West over the course of the next century. The empire in the East known today as the Byzantine Empire, but referred to in its time as the Roman Empire or by various other names ended in 1453 with the death of Constantine XI and fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Turks. 1627 BC AD 14, Augustus Octavian, the grandnephew and adopted son of Julius Caesar, had made himself a central military figure during the chaotic period following Caesar's assassination. In 43 BC, at the age of 20 he became one of the 3 members of the Second Triumvirate, a political alliance with Marcus Lepidus and Mark Antony. 17. Octavian and Antony defeated the last of Caesar's assassins in 42 BC at the Battle of Philippi, although after this point tensions began to rise between the two. The triumvirate ended in 32 BC. Torn apart by the competing ambitions of its members, Lepidus was forced into exile and Antony, who had allied himself with his lover Queen Cleopatra VII of Egypt, committed suicide in 30 BC following his defeat at the Battle of Actium, 31 BC, by the fleet of Octavian. Octavian subsequently annexed Egypt to the empire. 18. Now sole ruler of Rome, Octavian began a full-scale reformation of military, fiscal and political matters. The Senate granted him power over appointing its membership and several successive consulships, allowing him to operate within the existing constitutional machinery and thus reject titles that Romans associated with monarchy, such as rex, king. The dictatorship, a military office in the early republic typically lasting only for the 6-month military campaigning season, had been resurrected first by Sulla in the late 80s BC and then by Julius Caesar in the mid-40s. The title dictator was never again used. As the adopted heir of Julius Caesar, Octavian had taken Caesar as a component of his name, and handed down the name to his heirs of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. With Vespasian, one of the first emperors outside the dynasty Caesar evolved from a family name to the imperial title Caesar. Augustus created his novel and historically unique position by consolidating the constitutional powers of several republican offices. He renounced his consulship in 23 BC, but retained his consular imperium, leading to a second compromise between Augustus and the Senate known as the Second Settlement. Augustus was granted the authority of a tribune, tribunicia potestas, though not the title, which allowed him to call together the Senate and people at will and lay business before it, veto the actions of either the Assembly or the Senate, preside over elections, and it gave him the right to speak first at any meeting. Also included in Augustus's tribunician authority were powers usually reserved for the Roman censor. These included the right to supervise public morals and scrutinize laws to ensure they were in the public interest, as well as the ability to hold a census and determine the membership of the Senate. No tribune of Rome ever had these powers, and there was no precedent within the Roman system for consolidating the powers. Territorial development of the Roman Republic and of the Roman Empire. Animated map, Roman aureus bearing the portraits of Mark Antony, left, and Octavian, right, issued in 41 BC to celebrate the establishment of the Second Triumvirate by Octavian, Antony and Marcus Lepidus in 43 BC. Both sides bear the inscription 3 VIRPC, meaning one of 3 men, fourth regulation of the Republic. The Augustus of Prima poured off Tribuni and the censor into assing the position, nor was Augustus ever elected to the office of censor. Whether censorial powers were granted to Augustus as part of his tribunician authority, or he simply assumed those, is a matter of debate. In addition to those powers, Augustus was granted sole imperium within the city of Rome itself. All armed forces in the city, formerly under the control of the prefects, were now under the sole authority of Augustus. Additionally, Augustus was granted imperium proconsulare maius, literally, eminent proconsular command, the right to interfere in any province and override the decisions of any governor. With imperium maius, Augustus was the only individual able to grant a triumph to a successful general, as he was ostensibly the leader of the entire Roman army. The Senate reclassified the provinces at the frontiers, where the vast majority of the legions were stationed, as imperial provinces, and gave control of those to Augustus. The peaceful provinces were reclassified as senatorial provinces, governed as they had been during the Republic by members of the Senate sent out annually by the central government. 19. Senators were prohibited from so much as visiting Roman Egypt, given its great wealth and history as a base of power for opposition to the new emperor. Taxes from the imperial provinces went into the fiscus, the fund administrated by persons chosen by and answerable to Augustus. The revenue from senatorial provinces continued to be sent to the state treasury, Aeron, under the supervision of the Senate. The Roman legions, which had reached an unprecedented 50 in number because of the civil wars, were reduced to 28. Several legions, particularly those with members of doubtful loyalties, were simply disbanded. Other legions were united, a fact hinted by the title Gemina, twin. 20. Augustus also created special cohorts to maintain peace in Italia, with 3. The Praetorian Guard, kept in Rome. Control of fiscus enabled Augustus to ensure the loyalty of the legions through their pay. Augustus completed the conquest of Hispania, while subordinate generals expanded Roman possessions in Africa and Asia Minor. Augustus' final task was to ensure an orderly succession of his powers. His stepson Tiberius had conquered Pannonia, Dalmatia, Rhaetia, and temporarily Germania for the empire, and was thus a prime candidate. In 6 BC, Augustus granted some of his powers to his stepson, 21, and soon after he. Portrait of Tiberius, Muses in Raymond. Toulouse recognized Tiberius as his heir. In AD 13, a law was passed which extended Augustus' powers over the provinces to Tiberius, 22, so that Tiberius' legal powers were equivalent to, and independent from, those of Augustus. 22, attempting to secure the borders of the empire upon the rivers Danube and Elbe, Augustus ordered the invasions of Illyria, Moesia, and Pannonia, south of the Danube, and Germania, west of the Elbe. At first everything went as planned, but then disaster struck. The Illyrian tribes revolted and had to be crushed, and 3 full legions under the command of Publius Quinctilius Varus were ambushed and destroyed at the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest in AD 9 by Germanic tribes led by Arminius. Being cautious, Augustus secured all territories west of the Rhine and contented himself with retaliatory raids. The rivers Rhine and Danube became the permanent borders of the Roman Empire in the north. In AD 14, Augustus died at the age of 75, having ruled the empire for 40 years, and was succeeded as emperor by Tiberius. Sources. The Augustan age is not as well documented as the age of Caesar and Cicero. Livy wrote his history during Augustus's reign and covered all of Roman history through to 9 BC. But only epitomes survive of his coverage of the late Republican and Augustan periods. Important primary sources for the Augustan period include Res Gesta Divi Augusti, Augustus's highly partisan autobiography. Historiae Romani by Velleius Paterculus, the best annals of the Augustan period. Controversi and Suaserae of Seneca the Elder. Works of poetry such as Ovid's Fasti and Propertius's 4th book, Legislation and Engineering also provide important insights into Roman life of the time. Archaeology, including maritime archaeology, aerial surveys, epigraphic inscriptions on buildings, and Augustan coinage, has also provided valuable evidence about economic, social and military conditions. Secondary ancient sources on the Augustan age include Tacitus, Dio Cassius, Plutarch and Lives of the 12 Caesars by Suetonius. Josephus's Jewish Antiquities is the important source for Judea, which became a province during Augustus's reign. 1468, Julio-Claudian dynasty. Augustus had 3 grandsons by his daughter Julia the Elder, Gaius Caesar, Lucius Caesar and Agrippa Postumus. None of the 3 lived long enough to succeed him. He therefore was succeeded by his stepson Tiberius. Tiberius was the son of Livia, the 3rd wife of Augustus, by her first marriage to Tiberius Nero. Augustus was a scion of the gens Julia, the Julian family, one of the most ancient patrician clans of Rome, while Tiberius was a scion of the gens Claudia, only slightly less ancient than the Julians. Their 3 immediate successors were all descended both from the gens Claudia, through Tiberius' brother Nero. The Great Cameo of France, a cameo 5 layers sardonyx, Rome CAD 23. Depicting the Emperor Tiberius seated with his mother Livia and in front of his designated heir Germanicus, with the latter's wife Agrippina the Elder. Above them float the deceased members of the house, Augustus, Drusus Julius Caesar, and Nero Claudius Drusus, and from gens Julia, either through Julia the Elder, Augustus' daughter from his first marriage, Caligula and Nero, or through Augustus' sister Octavia Minor. Claudius. Historians thus refer to their dynasty as Julio-Claudian. 1437, Tiberius. The early years of Tiberius's reign were relatively peaceful. Tiberius secured the overall power of Rome and enriched its treasury. However, his rule soon became characterized by paranoia. He began a series of treason trials and executions, which continued until his death in 37. 23. He left power in the hands of the commander of the guard, Lucius Aelius Sejanus. Tiberius himself retired to live at his villa on the island of Capri in 26, leaving administration in the hands of Sejanus, who carried on the persecutions with contentment. Sejanus also began to consolidate his own power. In 31 he was named co-consul with Tiberius and married Livilla, the emperor's niece. At this point he was hoisted by his own petard. The emperor's paranoia, which he had so ably exploited for his own gain, turned against him. Sejanus was put to death, along with many of his associates, the same year. The persecutions continued until Tiberius' death in 37.3741, Caligula. At the time of Tiberius's death most of the people who might have succeeded him had been killed. The logical successor, and Tiberius' own choice, was his 24-year-old grandnephew, Gaius, better known as Caligula, Little Boots. Caligula was a son of Germanicus and Agrippina the Elder. His paternal grandparents were Nero Claudius Drusus and Antonia Minor, and his maternal grandparents were Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa and Julia the Elder. He was thus a descendant of both Augustus and Livia. Marble bust of Caligula in Thliberhorst, Frankfurt. Caligula started out well, by putting an end to the persecutions and burning his uncle's records. Unfortunately, he quickly lapsed into illness. The Caligula that emerged in late 37 demonstrated features of mental instability that led modern commentators to diagnose him with such illnesses as encephalitis, which can cause mental derangement, hypothyroidism, or even a nervous breakdown, perhaps brought on by the stress of his position. Whatever the cause, there was an obvious shift in his reign from this point on, leading his biographers to label him as insane. Most of what history remembers of Caligula comes from Suetonius, in his book Lives of the 12 Caesars. According to Suetonius, Caligula once planned to appoint his favorite horse Incitatus to the Roman Senate. He ordered his soldiers to invade Britain to fight the sea god Neptune, but changed his mind at the last minute and had them pick seashells on the northern end of France instead. It is believed he carried on incestuous relations with his three sisters, Julia Livilla, Drusilla and Agrippina the Younger. He ordered a statue of himself to be erected in Herod's temple at Jerusalem, which would have undoubtedly led to revolt had he not been dissuaded from this plan by his friend King Agrippa. He ordered people to be secretly killed, and then called them to his palace. When they did not appear, he would jokingly remark that they must have committed suicide. In 41, Caligula was assassinated by the commander of the guard Cassius Chaerea. Also killed were his fourth wife Caesania and their daughter Julia Drusilla. For 2 days following his assassination, the Senate debated the merits of restoring the Republic. 24, 41-54, Claudius. Portrait of Claudius, Orts Museum, Berlin. Claudius was a younger brother of Germanicus, and had long been considered a weakling and a fool by the rest of his family. The Praetorian Guard, however, acclaimed him as emperor. Claudius was neither paranoid like his uncle Tiberius, nor insane like his nephew Caligula, and was therefore able to administer the empire with reasonable ability. He improved the bureaucracy and streamlined the citizenship and senatorial roles. He ordered the construction of a winter port at Ostia Antica for Rome, thereby providing a place for grain from other parts of the empire to be brought in inclement weather. Claudius ordered the suspension of further attacks across the Rhine. 25. Setting what was to become the permanent limit of the empire's expansion in that direction. 26. In 43, he resumed the Roman conquest of Britannia that Julius Caesar had begun in the 50s BC, and incorporated more eastern provinces into the empire. In his own family life, Claudius was less successful. His wife Messalina cuckolded him. When he found out, he had her executed and married his niece, Agrippina the Younger. She, along with several of his freedmen, held an inordinate amount of power over him, and although there are conflicting accounts about his death, she may very well have poisoned him in 54.27. Claudius was deified later that year. The death of Claudius paved the way for Agrippina's own son,